Finally, the much awaiting session is here. It's an absolute honor to welcome Professor Satyajit Majumdar to our session today. He comes with a rich academic background and over 40 years of experience. Professor Majumdar is a leading authority in entrepreneurship and social impact. Currently, he is serving as a dean at Tata Institute of Social Sciences. He has begun a guiding light in both academia and global initiatives. He's not just an educator, but a mentor, recognized for his contributions globally. Today, share his he'll share his wisdom on social business modeling, a topic that resonates deeply with our ethos at the Connecting Dreams Foundation, particularly our 3C model of change making. Thank you, Professor Majundar, for joining us today. Your insights are invaluable, and we are thrilled to learn from you today. Again, I welcome you to the session. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks for the kind words, Suhail. Really appreciate this, and also thank Amit for inviting. And I feel honored to be a part of this session, and also will sort of try to present a framework. So this session is largely to think through a framework, because there cannot be a ready-made solution to business model. Business model actually evolves. So getting right to the right business model is a process of evolution, which every entrepreneur learns. Even if it's a business enterprise, I think business model evolves. So certainly the answers will not be sort of prescriptive in nature. Answers will be more in terms of framework. So that's my submission, and I'm willing to take questions. Maybe we can, you can decide which way you would like to entertain question. Would you like them to write it on the Q&A box or chat box or whatever? I don't mind taking question in between also. We can decide. I think we can decide on that. So I'll quickly share my screen, and yeah, here is my screen. I hope screen is visible. Yeah.
Yes, it's visible.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you. So, yeah, so my topic of discussion is social enterprise business modeling. And basically, I've set some objectives for my own session. So basically, what I intend to do is how the participants, the social entrepreneurs, can evolve through a process of thinking to create a model for sustenance and stay relevant while staying profitable. And here, I would like to underline the word profitable. Being profitable and profiteering, these are two different concepts. So I'm not referring profiteering, I'm saying profitable, so that we stay in the market, right? So basically, I would like to sort of focus on how do we balance the passion with the revenue stream, because that's precisely the trouble most of us face, that how do I talk about revenue stream by balancing my passion for doing good for the society. That's one. Number two is how do we maximize gains for the stakeholder and also foresee opportunity and risk. I'll talk a little bit about business risk in subsequent part. So I think I'll start with clarifying the terminologies, because sometimes we kind of flip-flop between these terminologies. The first is when we say the person, the individual who initiates an enterprise is the social entrepreneur we are referring to. The social enterprise is the entity which gets created through the process of social entrepreneurship. So social entrepreneur is the person, social entrepreneurship is the process, and social enterprise is the entity. So this is how we would like to understand these words, right? So right now we are kind of understanding how this concept of social enterprise work across the globe. And here you will see that there is no uniformity in articulating the concept of social enterprise. And since in this session we have international audience, so I'm sure my audience will resonate what I'm saying. So mostly in sort of global South, if I put it in simplistic way, that is Asia, Latin America, and Africa. That's the South we are referring to. Largely, we call social entrepreneurs as agents to address societal needs, to do something good for the marginalized group of people. And the reason of marginalization could be any. But when you look at the ecosystem of Europe and UK, you will see that largely we talk about community interest corporation. Okay, and there are huge amount of intent which is significantly different from what we are referring in Asia and America. And you'll find government support, will find investors, and so on and so forth. So there's a huge amount of community involvement in the process. The involvement could be at multiple levels. But when you look at the Northern America, it's so there are two streams which we see. One is the charitable non-profits, etc., etc., and second is the foundations who lend grant, maybe in the form of grant capital, what we refer to. Interestingly, when you see this part of the world, that is Russia, you will see that Russia, that ecosystem looks at the social entrepreneurship as a basically faster and efficient way of delivering service to the marginalized people. So you will see a lot of investment, the capital investment, the major resources come from the government because government desires to provide services. So you will see different part of the globe has different point of view towards social entrepreneurship. But what we see, what stands common? The commonality is the mission-driven approach, mission-driven positive impact approach, to be more precise. And the social entrepreneurs want to impact lives and livelihood of the poor and marginalized people while operating in the sector which has got direct impact in their life. So that's the reason you will see skilling, healthcare, affordable healthcare, food, nutrition. These are the subjects. And of course, there could be subjects like waste management and climate also. But nevertheless, the subjects which impact directly are the ones which are picked up by social entrepreneurs a little bit more easily than others. And of course, we are looking at sustainability. So what is that we are finding interesting is when we talk about developing countries, the developing, including India. So we look at social entrepreneurship as a way to respond to the needs of the people, and especially livelihood, the basic needs probably, and of course aligning with SDG. Many of us actually see SDG as a common frame in which we kind of position our enterprises there. And of course, many of the social entrepreneurs are first generation because they are driven by passion and commitment. So that's the reason, unlike the business, the social businesses are actually passion driven, and hence not necessarily the people will have family background. And of course, bootstrapping is very common. And of course, because of that, the growth will be organic. But nevertheless, there is always a propensity of reinvesting the surplus to the growth of the organization. So how do we see things happening in India? Almost the same. So we are looking at the failures from the government actions and failures from the market forces. And that's precisely the social entrepreneurs operate on. So when I say market forces, let us be very clear that we cannot undo the market mechanisms. Okay, we are operating in a world of market. We are operating in a world of market which is predominantly driven by technology. So what remains independent variable in our articulation and discussion is the technology. You cannot undo the technology. Technology is far ahead of any entity, and market. These two are given phenomena. Now, within the given phenomena, so there would always be a natural sort of tendency to create economic value. But when we say economic value, it is not shareholder value alone. So we are referring economic value or economic benefits for the stakeholders. And maybe we can say primary stakeholder. There is one group of people for whom we are designing the whole sort of enterprise model. And of course, while balancing social and environmental value. So that's the reason you will see that the value convergence is very much fundamental to social enterprise creation. And that's where a lot of complexity comes in. There are many variables. Sometimes variables are contradicting. Variables are kind of creating a lot of issues in terms of optimization. And that's the reason it's not surprise that there are many cases suboptimal solutions find a better acceptance than optimal solutions. So maybe the optimality debate will always haunt us when we talk about social enterprise business model, especially when we talk about growth. And that's where lies the clarity in the minds of social entrepreneur. Where do we position your social enterprise? So that's the context in which I'm going to discuss now. So the core subject is business model. So what is business model? Business model is actually a concept which is coming from the literature of strategic management in the core management discipline. So what is business model? Business model is answering a question: how do we deliver value to the intended customer? Or maybe you can say intended consumer, right? And how do you motivate the customer or consumer to pay for the value delivered to them, right? And in the process, how do we generate surplus? How do we generate profit? And how we stay relevant? Now, here you may argue that so let us take an example. Suppose we are working with a community which is poor, which is resource poor. They don't have capability to pay. Like in India, we have midday meal programs running in schools where the children come from extremely poor background, and there is a huge motivation for them to come to the school for basic education because afternoon meal is served in the school, right? So here question: if there is a social enterprise which would like to operate in this space of delivering nutritious, sumptuous food to the poor children coming from marginalized groups, okay, will the children pay? That's the question. So you may ask, will they pay? Answer is no, they will not pay. They don't have capability to pay. So there could be multiple options to work upon. So you may say, okay, fine, let us work with their parents and help them to increase their income. So you work on the livelihood options, skilling option of the parents. But nevertheless, that's a longish journey. It takes time to improve the capability of the parents, and then parents earn money to pay for this food. So there would be substantial time lag. So in the process, children will suffer. So this could be one longish solution which might be sustainable, but not feasible as of immediate intended results is concerned. So what could be the way out? So there are agencies, there are organizations who run midday meals program. Midday means afternoon meal program across the country, and they associate with the schools, mostly public funded school, government schools, and they offer food. So the children will not pay, certainly. So in such cases, social enterprise will certainly depend on grants, right? So revenue model will not be customer paying for the food, but somebody else will pay on behalf of the customer or consumer for the food, right? So let us make it very clear: when we talk about enterprise business model, somebody pays. Okay, nothing is free, right? Somebody will pay, right? Either the consumer himself or herself, who is capable of paying for the consumption of goods and services, will pay, or sometimes they pay half, sometimes they pay partially. So that's what affordable healthcare system works in our country or any developing country for that matter. Or in extreme case, they will not pay. They will not pay anything. Somebody else will pay. Now the question is, when we talk about business model of all the three cases, where they will not pay, they will pay, or they will partially pay, in all the three cases, the revenue model will be different. And since the revenue model will be different, business model will also be different, right? So in the last case, when the children will not pay for their food at all, right, somebody else will decide to pay. Now the question comes, when you write a business plan or when we talk about a business model, what motivates that somebody to pay for somebody else's food? Okay, so that's precisely the nuts and bolts or the nuances of business model which we are referring here. So I think let us be very clear that revenue model has to be talked about, but who will pay is the larger question. I think all of us have to deal with this fact. So the statement number 2 is basically what customer want and how. So in some cases, if the customer is paying, customer probably will be demanding and he or she will say what they want. But if the customer is not paying, probably there would be a case when the voice of the customer will not be heard very articulate way. So probably that's where we believe the donors will come, donor will articulate, or somebody else will articulate, and the receiving end children will not raise their voice. I think this is precisely not very scientific way of understanding the business model. Even if the consumer or the customer doesn't pay, customer has a voice, customer has a requirement, customer has a need. How do you incorporate this listening the voice into the business model, okay, which typically we call as marketing in our general management language. So how your marketing plan will work, which will listen to the voice of the consumer, even if the consumers are not paying. So largely what we are saying, business model will explain how the organization will operate, what will it do, how it will generate revenue, right? Through the payment of the customers or through the payment by somebody else, how it generates surplus or profit, and how does it create impact, because we are referring social enterprise, and the fundamental reason why social enterprise exists is the impact. So here comes, these are the framework things which I'm referring to. So you can just summarize it with this picture, which was actually given by Clayton Christensen Institute. So I think this makes our life easy. So what we are referring on the left-hand top on your screen is the value proposition, right? What is the value we are offering to the intended primary stakeholder? Okay, how do we do it affordably? How do we do it conveniently? So first thing is, what is the value offer? What is the value proposition? That has to come very neat. It has to be crystal clear. What is the value offer, right? As I said a few minutes ago, if it is afternoon meal to the school going children in the government supported school, then it is nutritious, sumptuous, freshly cooked meal. That's the value promise, right? So it should be as clear as 2 or 3 words. So I'll ask you, all of you, to kindly articulate very clearly 2, 3 words where you define what is your value proposition, what's your value offer. Then comes, so I'll go in a kind of in my logic. Once the value proposition is decided, then I'll ask you to articulate what's the process. Okay, that is the right-hand bottom. What is the process of doing it? How do you put the things together? How you gather raw material? How do you train your people? How do you put the meal together, pack it, transfer it, okay, to the desired location at the school, right? So that's the process. So first decide the value proposition, then design the process of delivery to the intended group, okay? And the third, which is critical, is the right-hand top, resources. How do you gather the resources? What are the resources? How do you gather them? How do you gather technology? How do you gather equipment? How do you gather space? How do you gather cash? How do you gather money, right? Even money is a resource if it is purely for the children who will not pay, right? So resource includes those things. And there has to be a scientific resource planning, and there has to be scientific resource sourcing. So that's the third piece, which is referred. So I refer 3: value proposition, process, and the resources. Then the fourth come, which is actually the difficult part when we talk about social enterprise, which is comfortably clear for the business enterprise, but difficult part for social enterprise, is the revenue formula. What is your cost structure? What is the activity which will pay for it? What is the activity which will not pay for it? And so on and so forth, right? Where do you get money from, and where do you don't get the money? Right. So these are the revenue formula thing which we are referring to. So I'll ask you to kindly, when we think about a business model, I think this is pretty handy sort of framework, which we can keep it in mind, and we can straightway refer to it. This is not my framework. I have adopted from Clayton Christensen Institute. So maybe these are some of the indicators by which we can articulate these are probably, you can say, the variables, right? So how do you see the market? How are the opportunity? How the opportunity exists within the government system or beyond government system? How is the environment, macroeconomic environment? It is liberal, it is not liberal, particularly post-COVID, when we see that there are a lot of discussion around vaccination, okay, a lot of discussion about nutrition, a lot of discussion about mental health, right? How the government policy system work, etc., etc. So that's the opportunity space. The second is the social. All of us are aware, right? Gender, caste, class, including judiciary system, how it works for the people, right? So that's the second. The third one could be individuals, the capability of the individual, their training, their capability to pay, their availability of finances with them, and what kind of information they have, right? How comfortable they are. And the last could be social and political environment, which all of us understand. How is the political stability, how the social system works, right? So basically, when we talk about business model, let us be very clear, we are discussing extremely complex subject, right? It's not straightforward. It's not a straight line that you give an input here and you get an output here. No, it's not that. There are multiple variables. It's a very complex webs of the variable. All of us put together, try to decode the web, find our way out to operate in the web of variables, and then put into actions. That's precisely is the purpose of talking about a business model, right? So maybe we can say that there are 4 things which we need to talk about, right, when we innovate a business model. Okay, maybe the product or service, pricing. Of course, we need to consider that who will pay. Okay, that's precisely the finance, grant, debt, or equity or whatever. And of course, the partnerships. Okay, the relationship, the collaborations, the multiple level partnership, domestic partnership, international partnership, etc., etc. So maybe this could be another way to put the things together. I'm describing the same thing, but I'm just giving a lot of provocation in terms of giving a lot of framework for you to think what we are referring as business model. So how do we see the regulatory environment, right? So there could be 2 ways to look into that. The first is the mandate. Okay, so mandate could be, there are 3 possibilities. I've just written on the right hand side. The coercion, right? That means that there would be penalty if you do or don't do. It depends on the subject which you are referring to. There could be restriction that you can do it, but there are restrictions like typical healthcare. It's restrictive, so we can have private healthcare system, but there are certain norms, there are certain mandates they will have to follow, right? And there are certain incentives, right? So maybe it could fall in one of them, or it could be falling in between 2 of them or so, right? So that could be the mandate part of the service or products and service. And the second could be governance, okay, where it demands approval, it demands license, it demands a reporting structure. Particularly those of us who depend on CSR fund, there's a lot of reporting structure has come in. There is a Schedule 7 in India for the company law, under which CSR has been mandated by the companies to spend 2% of their average 3 years profit. But nevertheless, it comes with a lot of stipulations, a lot of mechanisms by the law which need to be followed, right? So maybe we can look at all of them in a kind of more scientific way and do our homework right in terms of defining the context. But nevertheless, what is important is how this market and people are organized or unorganized. And of course, when we talk about social enterprise, not necessarily it will be very organized context. It will have multiple pieces. Some part of it could be organized, and some part of it could be quite informal, right? So I'm just taking this discussion forward that there could be some mandates, there could be some economics, there could be cost, there could be price, there could be per unit cost, there could be payment, there could be payment to the manpower, etc., etc., and there could be convenience, and there could be choices by the customers, by the other stakeholders, right? So these are the few things which actually define the complexity which I was referring to, right? So it is important that we talk about the resources. Of course, here we are referring capital, the resources available for dealing with the enterprise model, right? So certainly it could be enterprise level resources or capital, which we are referring to, the value chain level resources, where it's not for the entire enterprise, but in certain part of the value chain, capital is available. And of course, it could be access to the capital at the customer level. Now, all the 3 things are critical, though they may not be mutually exclusive. So let us start with the customer level capital availability. What is important? What is important is, suppose we are working with a marginalized group of people on their income generation activity, right? And for any income generation activity, people need working capital. They need, even if it is 1,000 rupees, Indian rupees per day, it's a working capital requirement for a micro or nano enterprise, maybe some family living in, say, slums or somewhere like that, right? Now, there are institutions around this. There are microfinance institutions. There are small banking setups, right? Now, the question is, if this capital is available, how your primary stakeholder have the facilitation process to access this capital? Probably that's where probably we need social enterprises. Similarly, in the value chain, there are many services or many value chain areas, like, for example, handloom and handicraft, agriculture, or maybe food processing at rural level. There are a lot of programs run by different governments, different federal government or different local government, etc., wherein capital is available. But capital in some cases, this value chain capital comes with some stipulations, right? It has to be located at some specific location. It has to be working with certain community. It has to be working with certain kind of problems, etc., etc. So that's a value chain kind of capital, okay, which could be understood properly. And there could be enterprise level capital where the capital is made available for the entire enterprise, and enterprise through its own plan can take a decision, how do we make use of this capital. So there could be capital can be seen from the three different lens. As I said, is the customer level availability, second is value chain level availability, and third is enterprise level availability. So let us move forward. So as I said, that my job is to give pointed questions. So these are the specific pointed questions which I'm asking you to take home. Okay. The first one is how business model engage with the marginalized community, and the community can participate in the value chain as customer. They can be a participant in the form of a partner. So they operate certain part of the value chain, particularly food processing, food packaging could be the examples, or sometimes they become input providers. So they could be, say, there are a group of people who collect minor forest produce from the nearby forest, and the raw material comes to the next level of value chain creation. So they may become an input provider, and so on, right? So first thing is where is the role of marginalized group in the value chain? Are they input provider? Are they customers? That means they are the output consumer. Maybe affordable healthcare could come there. Or are they value chain partner? They operate a certain piece of the partner. I think let us understand where is the role of marginalized people. That's question number one. And we need to answer it as clearly as possible. Now, second question is how business model manage their cost and revenue. So when you involve people, how do you manage your cost, right? There are occasions when the marginalized groups are paid on, say, daily wages, right? And we have seen, I'm sure many of us have seen how quickly the cash dries up and the enterprise faces problem, because the wages are assured to the marginalized group, right? But the output produced by them, they go to the market, they are sold, and the cash is generated. This cycle takes time, right? So can there be different sets of arrangement? I'm not saying we should not pay, but what I'm saying, can there be a different set of arrangement? Or there could be different way of looking into the business model in such cases, right? So that's precisely the question. And the best way to do is the transfer ownership, right? When community instead of staying like an employee can become the owner of the organization, then the whole perspective of the organization changes, and the entire cash flow management can be seen quite differently. The third framework question for enterprise model, social enterprise model, is how business models run their operations or processes. Basically, the process which I was referring, that Clayton Christensen model. Okay, how do you produce? How do you distribute? How do you package? How do you transfer? How do you deliver? All these things, right? That's the third thing. And this will have a cost implication, right? And if this process part is done efficiently, the cash generation part can be faster, right? So that's the third framework question. And the fourth framework question is how business leverage technology. If you remember a few minutes ago, I said there are two things which are independent. One is market and second is technology. So certainly no social enterprise can shy away to say that you don't care for technology, you will have to care for technology, right? So how do you look at technology, product technology? How do you look at process technology? Or how do you look at system integration technology, which is nothing but integrating multiple sort of technology platforms to deliver value? So this is precisely the framework question. So maybe I'll take a short pause here, and I don't mind taking few questions if you have any so far, because we have talked about the role of social entrepreneur enterprise, what they do. And then we have also said that different country have a different perspective, different way of thinking about social entrepreneurship. And then we have gone to some fundamental concepts of enterprise business model. And we said very clearly that market and technology are independent variables, right? You cannot say that you will not operate in market, and you cannot say that you don't care for technology, because those are independent variable, which is given to all of us at any given situation. But The intensity of technology could be different. The technology, in some cases, is highly sophisticated. In some cases, they're reasonably rudimentary, or sometimes indigenous technology, right? Indigenous community also have their technology. Even that itself is a technology, right? How do you integrate that to the value chain? And how do you look at these four framework question, which I was referring to? How do you involve community as input provider or a partner or a customer? And then the other things, right? Revenue model, processes, and of course, how do you sort of put the pieces together to see that the value is delivered and the revenue is realized? And again, I'm referring not necessarily that every time the end user or the consumer have to pay. There could be somebody else who will pay, right? But then how do you engage with that somebody else, right? Whom you may call as a donor or whatever it may be, right? So that's precisely the business model question I'm referring to. Yeah, I'm open to take some questions at this point of time, and let us see where are we in terms of absorbing these thoughts.
But I have one question.
Sure.
Sure. All right, I'll start with and then this can take up.
Yeah.
The thing is, like, sometimes, especially it happens with a lot of fellows, that when you do a proof of concept,
Yes.
it's wonderfully well in a small community with less number of people. But the moment you start to scale up,
Yeah.
I think at that time, the things go wrong.
Absolutely.
And so what are the things, like the questions that you asked are absolutely specific. But I think it is very difficult sometimes at that stage to understand.
Yeah.
You've already got a success. This is working.
Yeah.
To scale up. So at that time, how do we look at this scenario again?
Right. So yeah, so it's actually a structure and system question as well, which we realize much later, right? Because the question is, I think the first fundamental question, Amit, is how do you define scale? Is it that you want to bring more people as recipient of the service? Is it that you want more people to come as a partner? Is it that you want to bring more people as an input provider? Right. So I think the first thing, and as I said, these words have to be crystal clear. When we say scale, what does this mean? Is it that I want to serve more number of people? If it is so, then the next question comes. I'm just going by the Clayton Christensen's that four corners, right? If the value proposition has to reach to more number of people, right, then the process has to be designed that way. Just imagine we are talking about the afternoon meal program, right? If you think that we need to operate 4 more schools, and the schools are, say, 20 kilometers away from the last one, right? So do we have the delivery mechanism? Because the food has to be served at the same point of time. You can't say the 4th school will get food only at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, whereas the first school gets food at 12 afternoon, right? That's not done because the typical lunchtime is 12, right? So now do we have the delivery mechanism to supply food to all of them at 12 o'clock? That's one. Do we have ability to produce so much of meal, okay, to deliver on time, right? And then comes the resource management, right? Once we say all of them, then what is the number? Okay, where is the cost? Okay, where is the who will pay for the cost? Okay, and so on and so forth. I think where we commit mistake is, so far as the passion is concerned, we are perfect. We are extremely good, and we are very passionate. We are very committed. I think that part is fine. But the moment this fitting the pieces comes, okay, the manifestation of pieces will be different. The energy requirement will be different. So I always give an example when we talk about growth. So we need to go to the atomic structure. Right? It's almost asking an electron to change its orbit. Right. So it's almost like that. Now the question is, when the electron decides that it will leave the outermost orbit and go a little closer to the nucleus, right? It has to gather that much energy to transit, right? So that much energy constitute manpower, okay, money, supply chain capability, right? So unless you get that much of energy, okay, the electron won't be able to transit from outer orbit to inner orbit. And we know it very well. At the nucleus, there is a positive energy sitting, and the electron has to counter that energy, right? So we need that much energy to stay afloat. And that's precisely the sustainability question is all about, right? Most of the time, we forget that we need to gather that quantum of energy to shift our outer orbit to the next inner orbit. And we need huge amount of strategic resource mobilization, huge amount of capability, huge amount of people capability, team. I think those are the fundamental things which we need to do that, right? So I think we'll have to go back to the drawing board whenever we want to scale up. A, define what is scale. B, do you have you gathered energy to move to that scale which we are referring to? Have you drawn the value chain correct? Have you done the resource mapping correct? Have you done the cash flow management correct? And so on and so forth, right? Unless we do that, I think scale always remains a kind of, I would say, fuzzy concept, and it will always be a difficult proposition for all of us.
Sure. Thanks a lot, sir. I think it clears the entire thing. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So do we have any more question? Anyone? Anyone can ask or write. Yeah.
So there's one question just come. It's like is co-designing the service by involving the intended customers the best way to address value?
Absolutely. Answer is yes. Answer is yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Two advantage. A, we know what customer is looking for, right? And when the customer becomes a participant in the design, I think the design going wrong, this possibility comes down. So it's always desirable. That's number one. Number two, the ideal situation will be the ownership can get slowly transferred to the stakeholder for whom we are designing a solution. Like for example, if the customer itself becomes the owner of the process, I think things will be simpler actually. The cost will be reduced, things will be simpler. So I think, yes, it's, in my view, it's highly desirable. That's a very good question. I think it's very, very pertinent. Yeah. And I think sustainability can be answered better if you do that way. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, any other question? Any thought, or maybe any experience? We can spend a few minutes to listen to the experience of our participants. All of them are doing great job, I'm aware. I see a hand raised. Clyde. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Prof. Personally, typically run a non-profit organization, so more of non-profit programming. So how I've been doing the business model is, for example, if I design a training that maybe the target audience can't pay, I try to reach out to friends or partner organizations and tell them, okay, this is the thing, I want to have a summit. And I think by giving me this money, you'll be helping a number of this X number of people to attend or get this kind of experience. Yeah, because now in local people, it's very hard for them to pay for such training. So just trying to use the networks and organizations, but also explain to them what these participants are getting afterward. We also have to make sure that what these participants are getting aligns to their vision. For example, we tell World Vision, by giving us maybe $1,000, you're going to help 20 people attend this training for the number of days. We shall be making them, develop enterprises, which suits with your global vision of, eliminating a number of children, teenage pregnancies, etc., etc. Yeah, that has been my experience. Of course, quite challenging, but I've just seen pretty much it's the same thing that you're trying to help us learn. Thank you.
Okay. There are a few words I missed out. So I understood. Clyde was referring about training, some fund for developing the capability. Okay. But was there any question if I missed out? Yeah. Or it was just the thought process? Did I miss out anything?
No. I was just sharing an experience. You said in case.
Correct. No, I understood. I was just a little worried that was there any question. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you very much. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you. I really appreciate this. So yeah, shall we move forward if there is no question? Yeah. Okay, fine. So let me go back. Now I'll just maybe I'll straightway go to a case where this value chain design, which is actually a kind of business model sort of piece, I would say, how it can be seen, right? So I'll straightway go to that. Yeah, this one. So basically, I and my one of my professional colleague. Of course, she's also a PhD scholar working under my supervision. So we were curious to see how the private initiative, when I say private, that means the enterprise level initiative, which is non-government, working in improving the agriculture value chain in the country. And all of us know that agriculture is uh, reasonably problematic in India. I'm not talking about the large farms. I'm not talking about the large farmers who have ample of land. I'm referring to the small and marginal one. They are the one who are quite vulnerable for multiple reasons. They are mostly growing produce which is lesser shelf life, particularly the fruits and vegetables and so on and so forth. I have data actually. More than 45% fruits and vegetables are supplied through small and marginal farmer. And then the shelf life, the supply chain issues are pretty serious. And that's why it's very risky value chain which they operate on for multiple reasons. That's one. Number two is they work at a very subsistence level. So that's the reason technology infusion is also not always possible. And hence, this adds to the problem of value chain. So we wanted to see what's happening. Okay, how social enterprises are addressing this issue. So and we were curious to theorize it. So can we put a framework? Can we put our learning clear? So we mapped 121 social enterprises, private enterprises, so social enterprise precisely. And we had our own working definition of social enterprise. And we said, okay, let us map them, what they do in the value chain. So what you see on the top is actually the value chain of agriculture: pre-harvest, harvest, and primary processing, storage and crop rotation, etc. And of course, processing, I'm referring food processing and market linkage. This is the typical sort of value chain of agriculture, right? And we have also defined the scope of this activity by different social enterprises. The scoping is done. And of course, we wanted to see that how these are being done. So that's why the left hand bottom first column, you will see we are talking about the cluster of private sector provision. What is what they do exactly? They equipment supply, they provide services, they provide warehousing facility, and etc. etc. So this is where the scoping was done. And surprisingly, we saw there are two activities which all the social enterprise do, irrespective of their scoping, actually. And that's where the bottom part of the picture, what you see on the screen, the weather information and the price information. Okay, generally you will see everyone is engaged in weather information because we believe that the small farmers are subjected to weather risk more. Okay, and we are seeing this year also. The typical monsoon rain are delayed and they're delayed. And of course, when the rain starts, it starts at one point of time, which causes flooding. And so we may get average rainfall right, but this average rainfall is of no use because all the rains come at a particular time, which is of no use for the farming, right? So for the sake of meteorological data, the rainfall is average, but for the sake of agriculture benefit of this rainfall, that's not appropriate, right? So that's the reason weather information becomes very critical for the farmers. Okay, and you will see across enterprises, almost everybody does that, right? And the bottom portion, the extension services. Extension services are typically information about the seeds, information about other government programs, okay, the soil testing. These are the services, right? Service to the farm services. So you will see there are many organizations, or almost everybody does that. So you will see here, irrespective of the scoping of the enterprise, there are two things which are irrespective of the scoping of the enterprise. So you will see everybody works there, right? This is something which we wanted to understand how the value chain operates in agriculture, especially for this section of the farmers who are not rich and who have always resource constraint, and that leads to their debt trap. And so they're always in debt and they always have a resource challenges, right? So this is what we have seen. I'm sure such characteristics exist in all value chain, every industry value chain. I'm sure handloom handicraft will also have similar nature or different nature. I'm sure every value chain has different nature. So I would request all social entrepreneurs here to kindly do a little bit of research of this kind to understand how the scoping is done. Why I'm saying so? Suppose you are an input service provider. Suppose you are a farm equipment service provider, and there are cases where farm equipments are leased in. The farmer need not buy. That there is a per hour rate or some 1,000 rupees or some 1,000 rupees per hour, and the service provider will come and do the tilling and they will go away. So you'll have to book the service providers, right? So you do not buy a machine and those kind of stuff. There are many services available, right? Now, suppose you are in one such service. I'm just giving an example of a social enterprise. Suppose you are in one such service, right? It is expected by the farmer that you will also give some expert advice on the weather information, and you'll also give little advice on the kind of seed I can use. And if suppose there's a drought and there's a shortage of rainfall, farmer would like to know, give me some suggestion which has got a short life cycle crop, okay, which will not take 3 months to grow, so which I can grow in 1 month and sell and realize my losses, right? So these kind of services are important because your existence of the service actually depend on the farmer's efficiency, and the farmer doesn't find value in your service through these mechanisms. I think the enterprise won't exist. So you will see this logic applies across value chain. So kindly look at these kind of structural arrangements, how the value chain operates in any sector. It could be skilling, it could be handloom, it could be handicraft, and so on, right? These are the typical sectors where typically social enterprise work. So I think what needed to be done, okay, in a very explicit sense, I'm kind of concluding I'm making some conclusive statement here. What I'm saying is, let us not worry about whether we are non-profit, whether we are for-profit. I think these questions are irrelevant and these questions have no clear answer. I think that's not something which we need to worry about. When we refer to the business model, surplus generation is a part of the activity which all of us have to do, irrespective of our legal structure, whether we are for-profit or not. Now, the question is, if by nature of your value chain activity, you are not able to generate surplus, then you'll have to find somebody who will support you. The example which I gave about afternoon meal program of the school children. That's one. Number two is how you design and operate a business model which creates sustainable value. This is critical. Because what happens is, as a social enterprise, when you have resource, you work with a primary stakeholder and you disappear when your resources dry out. Okay, that's unfair. That's unfair. So how do you stay relevant despite ups and downs? I think that's the sustainability what I'm referring to. So I'm kind of asking you to think of sustainable of the enterprise a little bit more critically, then talk about sustainability of impact, because impact will be sustainable only when you make your enterprise sustainable. I think that's the second thing. The third thing is how your principles are guiding you to operate the value chain. Okay, where you operate, okay, how do you work on? I think what are the principles on which you create value? If you remember, I talked about value proposition a few minutes ago. The same thing I'm referring here. And the last question, which I have been kind of repeatedly saying, who creates value, who pays, how it is being paid, and where it is being paid, etc. I think these are the harsh questions which Amit was also asking about when he was referring to scale. These are the questions which all of us have to answer. And as I was saying that I'm not here to give answer, I'm giving you to give a list of questions which you need to look into while designing the social enterprise business model, right? So basically, these are the ongoing questions, right? Every almost on everyday basis, we'll have to talk about 4 kind of feasibility. I'll put technology feasibility at the center, market feasibility on the top, supply chain feasibility on the left, and financial feasibility on the right. I think this is the triangle which all of us have to work on as we grow. Amit was actually referring the same thing. This is the question. So if you work on the growth trajectory, I think the size of the triangle may become bigger and bigger, but nevertheless, all of them have to fit together. And it has to be fitting the together thing, which is the puzzle of business model, which all of us have to kind of look into. So the question, what we are asking fundamentally, because you may ask me where to start, because I'm saying here to start. So this is the starting point. Okay, I think the first thing you need to question is, do you have the know-how? Where is the know-how? Which product? Which process? Suppose you are saying you will process some food item. You will process some food item gathered as a minor forest produced from the nearest forest, right? How do you collect them? How do you store them? How do you clean them? Where do you do that? So this is the know-how I'm referring to, right? So that's the first thing. Once you are done with that, Then question comes, what do you do with these products, right? When you process them, what do you do with them? Is there a market exist, or is there a market to be created? If the market is existing, go and find out. What is the pricing? What is the competition? Who are the people? Who are the buyer? What price they pay, etc., right? If it is non-existence, is there a possibility of creating market? Creating market is a bit challenging, but nevertheless, find out if the market exists. I think the easy way is to start with the market which exists and then think of how do you expand the market. So that's the second piece. The third piece is when you say, okay, fine, I have know-how and I have market. How do I operate my supply chain? Okay, how do I pack my food? How do I transfer it? How do I put them into a box and send it to my customers? That's a supply chain. Again, the same question we are asking: supply chain exist or create? I would suggest here I would say your expertise of bootstrapping matters. Better you latch on something which exists rather than create everything new. If you start creating everything new, your initial investment will be too high, right? So try to bootstrap, try to work with somebody in alignment with some existing player. I think that's most advisable. And the last one is, how do you fix up your resources in finance? That's what bootstrap is all about, right? How do you borrow? How do you put the resources in? I think if you start writing description of this triangle, right? Start with technology, then market, then supply chain, and then resource. I think the moment you start thinking systematically, you are developing your business model. So I would suggest this is the first thing we should start with the drawing board. Go to the drawing board and start answering these questions, right? So yes, what Amit was asking, feasibility triangle becomes bigger and bigger as you think about a scale, but we need to continuously answer this question, right? When we say it is feasible, then question comes capability. Feasibility is basically what resides outside you. Capability is what resides within you, right? If it favorable outside, then you have to develop your capability. So I'll just put this this one. Just give me this one, right? So here is quite plus some pointers, right? And I have done some 2x2 matrix of capability, feasibility, high, low. Okay, so suppose your capability high and your feasibility is also favorable. I think you should be the high performance entrepreneurs, right? Just go and get it done, right? That's it. Nobody should stop you. Suppose your capability is low, but the feasibility is high. That means market opportunity exists. Opportunity is huge. Technology exists, right? It is profitable. Your supply chain can be possible, right? But your capability is low. I think here comes your investment, because Clyde was also referring training and capacity building. Here is the need for training and capacity building for the people to develop their capability to latch on the feasibility. So I think any skilling program, which whatever you refer to, any skilling program, I think please question what is the scene of feasibility. Because skilling people is fine, training people is fine. There would be a funder who will give you money to train people. But the question is, after you train them, what they do? Is there a feasible situation which exists wherein this skill will be of use to them, right? And unless we fix up this feasibility thing, this capability or capacity building has no relevance. That's my argument, right? So that's the second thing. Now, suppose the third option where the feasibility is low. Okay, that means market is not very lucrative. There are not many customers. Supply chain is a little difficult. It's a very remote village. People cannot travel, and so on and so forth. And your capability is high, but you are pretty competent, right? I would argue then you should become a disruptor. Okay, because you have a capability, right? You can create new opportunity. You can redesign. So you could be a disruptor who will create an absolutely innovative business model, right? So if you're capable, I think you have the strength to do it, right? So I think go back to the drawing board and start challenging every norm which exists, right? And make every problem as an opportunity. So every problem becomes your opportunity, right? Solve multiple problems because you're capable, right? So I would say that you should think like a disruptor. You should be absolutely go-getter and get it done, right? Don't wait for the opportunity to come. Every problem is an opportunity. And the last piece, which I put question mark, low, I'm just not commenting here because that's a little bit more sort of complex, which for a while I'm avoiding that. So once we say that we have done this part, so yeah, I'm going here now. Sorry. I made a mistake. I'll just start sharing again. I made a mistake. Yeah. So go up. Yeah. So I just wanted to tell you something about risk. Yeah. So this is the last piece which I would like to talk about, and then we can invite some question. So every business model, every supply chain, every business for that matter, business or social business, right, comes with a set of risk, right? So risk management is the thing which I'm referring to. I'm not talking about risk taking. I'm saying risk managing, and all of us have to equip ourselves to be a risk manager. So I'm saying risk associated with the feasibility and risk associated with the capability, because just now I referred capability and feasibility differently. As I said, feasibility resides outside, capability resides within, right? So what remains outside is the economic risk. Okay, suppose there is a slowdown, suppose there is a lockdown, right? These are the economic risks. Market risk, suppose the demand is going down, people are not able to pay, etc., etc. Regulatory or policy risk, suppose there's a huge, very stringent regulatory requirement comes and you are not supposed to produce that particular goods and service, or of course technology imposed risk, which I said before, the technology is an independent variable. So these are the feasibility kind of risk which I like to pay attention to. Okay, I'm not saying that I should get scared, but what I'm saying, I should be aware that these are the risks. I will have to handle that. These are the basket of feasibility risk. And there are certain things which are capability risk, which are typically supply chain risk. Okay, how do you pack? How do you deliver? How do you deliver during rainy days? The roads are bad. The vehicle will drive slow. How the vehicle will travel? How the vehicle will reach? These are typically supply chain risk, which are capability risk. Technology adoption risk. Suppose people are not educated, they are not computer literate. How do you automate the process, etc., etc.? Or financial risk, the cost management, revenue management, etc., etc. And of course, human resource related risk or the team related risk, right? So these are typical things I would suggest to pay attention to, because I repeat again, business model is a very complex. There are multiple variables playing here, right? All of us have to gather all of them together and fix them together to make it favorable to operate. I think that is something which, that's what precisely business model writing is all about. Yeah, and as I said, business model evolves. No one gets the business model right on the day one. Okay, it evolves. So when we talk about capability, it is capability of yours. It's the capability of your founding team. It's the capability of the team, capability of the organization. And probably all of us, when we talk about business model, I think these are the things which we need to answer. So probably I'll conclude with this slide, and then we can open up questions, right, if you have any. The first thing is, as I have been talking continuously, that have a clear understanding of the value chain. I gave an example of agriculture. Have a clear understanding of the value chain. Who are the stakeholders, who receive value, who pays for it, who is responsible for operation, where the primary stakeholder is living in the entire value chain. That's one. While you operate a value chain, what are the financial implications? Who pays for the production? Who pays for the consumption? Right? We need to be very clear. So what I'm asking is, which part you spend money and which part you earn money? There's a possibility that you never earn money. That's a possibility. Then how do you manage your cash, right? How do you manage your fund? That's the second thing. The third thing is scale and volume, which Amit was asking about. How do you think about scale? The scale will come with a set of new sets of problem, right? So we need to be very clear when we talk about scale. What does it mean? As I said, first define the scale and understand what are the options available through which you can operate on the scale, right? That's the third thing. And the fourth thing is, what are the market opportunity, right? Is the market available? Is the market not available? If it is available, what is the dynamics of the competition, how it operates? If it is not available, how do you create opportunity for you? I think these are some of the questions which we can talk about. And if you want to sort of work on enterprise design, I think what is critical in my view is social enterprise should work to work with more stakeholders together to create capacity among the value chain partner and gradually avoid dependency on you. I think that's where the sustainability comes from. And that demands huge amount of thinking so far as the value chain is concerned. I gave you some examples. The midday meal is an example. Agriculture, I gave you some examples. And there are many other social enterprises who designed the business model. I think in India, we have one of the finest social enterprises which we can talk about. One of the finest social enterprises which you can talk about is Arvind Eye Care, which works on affordable healthcare, eye care, I would say. They have very, very nicely done efficiency-driven value chain or supply chain, wherein the capacity utilization itself is multifold, and that's how that brings cost under control. So instead of producing 1 unit, if you can produce 10 units with the same resources, right? So you save money for the 9 units. So that's the model which social Arvind Eye Care works. So one can think on these lines also, right? And these are typically business model discourses, which all of us have to do that. It's pretty strategic, and I repeat again, none of us get the social business model right on the day one. All of us evolve, all of us learn. We commit mistakes, we learn from our mistakes, and it's not straight line, as I said. It's kind of going back and forth, little sort of fuzzy to begin with, but nevertheless, when you operationalize it, you learn how do you discover the right business model. I'll stop here. We have about 20 minutes in our hand. Maybe we can take up some questions or some thoughts, some experiences. Yeah.
So we have a question, sir, from Vandana. How can we avoid or reduce business risk?
So you cannot avoid business risk. You have to manage risk. I think that's the statement, right? We need to be aware. I think, as I said, I gave you 2 types of risk. One is the feasibility risk and one is capability risk, right? May not be all the risk element which I have listed down is relevant to you. So first, do a little bit of strategic thinking that what are the risks which are external to you and what are the risks which are internal to you, right? Have your plan right. And I'm not saying that do plan B. I'm personally, I'm against writing a plan B. Make your plan A as robust as possible. Sit down with the experts, sit down with the mentors, do it right. Okay. So I'll always ask you to do a business plan which is robust enough to manage. I think that's how you can minimize the risk. Risk can be minimized only through preparedness. Okay, one has to gather strength. You remember I said that if electron shifts from outer orbit to inner orbit, it has to gather that energy to shift, right? All of us have to do that. And that demands enormous amount of work, intellectual, physical. Okay, all of us have to do that. And that's the only way we can manage risk.
Sir, I have one question, and
Sure.
this is like, what happens like when especially a social enterprise when it starts? Mostly in most of the cases, it's dependent on the person who started this. It's because the kind of passion that person who starts it and drives it.
Yes.
And thing is, it's because you touched upon a base that how can you detach yourself if you want to sustain, you have to detach yourself from the operations or the business part of it to take it forward. So that journey is very difficult.
Transition,
Transition is not that easy, and I think
yes.
if you can like give certain tips to all of us in this regard, like what's the best way, like step-by-step approach we should take, because it's not happens in an instant. It takes a long time to do it, the right people, the team, etc. So what are the things one must look at while going through this transition?
Right. There are 2-3 things. That's a very practical question, very important question. So initially, you and your enterprise are same, right? You are identified with your enterprise, and enterprise is nothing but you, right? Now the question is, for the purpose of sort of registration, we do register an organization. We may create a Section 8 company or private limited company or whatever, right? But that's only for the purpose of what you put in the legal structure, so that to the outside world, you will say, yes, I have an organization, right? So organization is not actually a frame. Organization is a set of people. It's a set of human beings working for a cause. Okay. So now the time has come when we'll have to think that me as an organization to human resource as an organization. This transition is critical. And sometimes, believe me, your ego hurts, right? Sometimes your ego hurts. How can you think about an entity which is created by you can run without you? Right? How can I think so, right? I'm not saying you exit. What I'm saying, you are not expert in everything. You are expert in A, B, C, right? But what will happen to D, E, F, G, etc., right? You need to bring people, you'll have to bring experts, right? And there are occasions, the people who are coming in as experts may be more skilled and more capable than you. Believe me, that's the truth. All of us have to face it. So what happens? I think we'll have to accept that people are talents, people come with expertise, and we'll have to allow them to find their space within my organization. That's why we'll have to transit from me as an organization to me as a organization as a human resource, right? I think that's precisely we need to do. So I think all of us have to get trained to think organization beyond us, and that is the only way your commitment will stay. Otherwise, your commitment will die down the moment you phase out. Okay, I'm not asking you to phase out. You may decide not to phase out. You may define your role, right? I would suggest that's where. So there are three roles I always say in enterprise. Actually, one is you as an entrepreneur. Second is you as a manager, because initial day you are doing everything. You are producing, you are packing, you are delivering. Okay, so you as an entrepreneur, you as a manager, and three, you as a leader. When you take your role as a leader, then you are not developing the organization, you are developing people, and people will develop the organization. So the third role, transiting to the third role, is critical. So leader is basically, and one of my professional friends said that leader is the people servant. Actually, you're serving people so that the people can perform better. I think we'll have to transit that role, and earlier the better. Earlier the better. If we develop that capability, and probably we need a lot of mentoring and coaching. Please, we should not shy away to go to a mentor. Okay, we must not. If you find this transition is critical, I'm getting a lot of mental strength. Better you find a sounding board. You get coached. You get mentors. I think avoiding mentor and coaching, I think, is also a reason why things become very stressful for us. I would suggest find a mentor. Let you speak out in front of the mentor and seek their advices. I think that's always good. And if you feel that your team is little more talented than you, then allow the team to function. Okay, make the purpose clear, right? But allow team to function, because, and it may happen that my teammates are more talented than me, more capable than me. It's fine. Let them function. So I think these are the typical leadership sort of, I would say, dilemma all of us have to settle. But earlier the better. I always feel that earlier we do it, I think we'll be happy.
Thank you so much, sir, for this. I think it clears a lot of things. And I think we have a question in the chat box, question or a comment from Google. Google, you would like to ask the question directly? Like, if you want to unmute yourself. Okay, we'll read it for him. Okay, given the current lean funding scenario, okay, Google has a bad throat, no worries. Lean funding scenario for social sector ventures, in your opinion, do you think social enterprises could be the best way to tackle societal issues going forward? In the Western Hemisphere, where there seems to be more reliance on government-private funding for service provision, and Southeastern approach condoned, particularly in the social work, academic practice, how might one convince them with social enterprise as an optimal way to address communities' needs?
I think pretty longish. Yeah, I understood the intent of the question. So I think first we need to understand social entrepreneurship is visualized and understood differently in different parts of the globe. I think so. It has to be context specific, because what we think about social enterprise in India may not be very appropriate in other parts of the globe. That doesn't mean that others are wrong and we are right. That doesn't mean. So that's the first thing. Number two, see, I think what is critical in social entrepreneurship is to understand that all the problems of the world cannot be solved by social entrepreneurs. Let us be very clear. There are many problems which social entrepreneurs cannot solve. Okay, so I think scoping and understanding the problem and then finding an opportunity, that's what feasibility I'm referring to. I'm very clear about feasibility and capability. First, you see what is feasible. If you think that it is not feasible to operate in a social enterprise mode, better we say this problem cannot be solved by social enterprise way. Maybe some problems are solvable by social worker only. Let social worker come. They may not run a social enterprise. They are pure social worker. They engage with the community and service the community through some mechanism of that. Even government has social workers, government has health workers, right? So I'm referring social worker as a group of experts, right? So it need not be social enterprise in all the cases. So that's my second statement, that let us not think that social enterprise is the magic box, which has solution for all the problems. No, that's not right. Social enterprise cannot solve all the problem, right? Let us be candid about it. Now the question is, if you think that this problem is not solvable by other discipline, but if you can tweak the model and make it solvable this way, maybe that could be the way. And that's what the example of Arvind Eye Care I was giving, right? Arvind Eye Care cracked the code, okay, of low cost, highly efficient. Arvind Eye Care, what is the positioning? There are three things which Arvind Eye Care talks about, right? Low cost, rather lowest cost, high volume, and high quality. Now, what is complex and contradictory here? The moment you talk about high volume, it cannot be high quality. Quality goes down, right? Because there is a lot of pressure on the resources and the quality per unit goes down. But here lies the business model question. How do you retain the quality? How do you get into the volume without compromising the quality? But your cost of operation comes down because you're talking about high volume, right? So I think Arvind Eye Care challenged the established norm. Then if you think that this problem is yet not solved in the existing system, and social enterprise can innovate a business model, which I was referring as a disruption, right? If you see there's a scope for disruption, then we'll have to talk a different language. We'll have to operate it differently. We'll have to do it differently, right? And sometimes being different cannot be done by you alone. You need other stakeholders to join in. Sometimes you need government to join in. Right, there are a lot of things which is being done in government partnership, particularly Amul as a movement, milk movement in the country, and what we talk about a white revolution in this country. Right, it is not only community movement, but government came huge support. Right, so then if you want this model to work, then we'll have to approach government to bring in this collaboration. Right, but nevertheless, if you think that the problem cannot be solved by social enterprise model, let us rethink what on the problem statement itself.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we've got a comment that Google's throat is not well, and he look forward to having a copy of your presentation. I think we have got a lot of queries in our groups also for the presentation. I think everyone is liking the content and.
Okay, fine. So I'll mail you. Yeah.
Okay. So one more thing, because we generally talk to the fellows every now and then, and one of the things what happens at early stage when you're doing everything on your own, right? It is under your absolute control. Okay. Even though at early stage we may not have funds, but we're able to take things as they come in. One of the things that people struggle in, like even when I started, I also faced struggle in when the moment you start getting into partnerships, even though you have a novel idea, you are innovative, you have full control, but you get into partnerships to scale, because in today's world, it is not possible. It has to be a collective effort to solve a problem. One alone can do it.
Absolutely.
So one of the challenges we were facing at that time were like how to find the right partners at the inception stage, not like later. Right now, it's like. And without compromising our vision, that's most important.
Yes.
Because what happens, like in scenarios like this, a bigger organization, if you partner with, your things are generally bogged down in this dynamic. True. And the bigger partnership, you're lost. Like you're not there.
Yes.
So at that time, you feel, even though we are doing the most, doing a lot of work, but in front of those partnerships. So how do we tackle such situation? How do we make sure we are able to like position ourselves in the right direction, the right way, and all the credits also are shared in the right.
Right. Of course, very practical question again. Finding the right partner is, particularly sometime founding team. I think it starts with that. Absolutely. So there are 2-3 things. I'm just talking out of my experience. Okay, I'm not referring any book to answer this question. See, the question is, who should be your partner? Okay, the one who believes in the purpose for which you are working. Okay, he can be a staunch critic of your style. Okay, but he believes in your purpose. I think that's very fundamental. Is the person aligned with the purpose? Okay, come what may. Person may be super critical. He may be, so you are very passionate, you are very emotional, you don't go by numbers, you go by you're very sort of purpose driven in terms of your empathy and all this time. And the person who is coming with you aligns with the purpose, and he says, nothing doing, I'm very rational thinker. Bring me the flip chart and bring me that, show me the numbers, then only I'll work with you, right? There are occasions when we have serious difference with such kind of people who bring a different articulation on the style of working, and we try to avoid. I think we need to have complementary style of working as a founding team. That's very, very critical. And please welcome the critiques as long as they align with the purpose. Again, I'm saying purpose is sacrosanct. Okay, but bring critics, allow critics to come in and help you to challenge, as simple as that. Let them challenge your every movement, right? And I think that's very important. The third thing is when we say founding team and founding partner, as the team grows, you will see the passion element will come later. Okay, people will, so for say 10th person or 20th person, it would be a job. It would be a salary job, right? So we should not think that they will also die for the purpose. They may not die. Okay, they will die later, not now, right? So for him, it's a job, and the person want to secure his career, want expect you to pay monthly salary, whatever salary we agreed on, right? So I think these are the facts of the life which all of us have to be realistic about. Okay. And I've seen social enterprises too much relying on volunteers. If you're a fundamentally volunteer-driven organization, then your business model is volunteer. That's a different thing. But what I'm saying, in order to cut my cost of manpower, I say, okay, fine, I'll recruit interns, I recruit volunteer. And that's where the problem starts. Because then the purpose goes somewhere else, and your convenience is because you are having a free manpower. You are having a manpower to whom you are not committed to pay, and hence the person exists. The alignment of the purpose is absolutely secondary, right? I think this should be avoided. This should be avoided. What is critical is the alignment of the purpose. And sometime, the last thing which I will make, sometime you find the right people, but the right people is not coming. I think it's not a bad idea to pursue the person to come in. It's not a bad idea. Sometime it is worthwhile telling the person, I want you, your existence in my system has a lot of value, please come. I think there are occasions I've seen. I'll just give one example, because I am a part of sort of very, very big NGO, which runs like an enterprise. Dr. Madhav Sate is the helm of the affair. Bombay Mother and Child Welfare Society. It's a huge organization. It runs like a company, but it's a non-profit actually. And they're very decent revenue model. It runs just like an organization. So long back, when the organization was kind of restructuring, it had some trouble with the employees, and it's resolved it. Then he pursued Mr. Julio Rivero, all of us know, who was the super cop of Punjab, who resolved the Punjab crisis, right? And he came to know that Mr. Rivero has retired and come back to Bombay. He went and approached him through some friends and says, sir, you should be our chairman, right? And this gentleman, he's a police officer, right? Police officer of very highest order. He has no business in social work of that kind, okay? And Dr. Sate narrates the story. In fact, I also sit in the same board. So I meet Mr. Rivero quite a few times. I feel fortunate that I really know him now. So he said the day he went with this proposal to Mr. Ribeiro, Mr. Ribeiro said his phone rang, and he went out to receive the phone call. And those were the days of landlines. There were no mobile phones. And the phone rings, and then he was answering. And Dr. Sati said, I was hearing what he was answering. So he was saying, whatever meant the word, he was saying that, no, there are a couple of gentlemen who came with some very interesting proposition. So tell the Prime Minister, I'm not able to take it up. Okay. And actually the person on the other end was calling from Prime Minister's office, and the Prime Minister was Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee. He was offering him the governor position in Jammu and Kashmir. Okay, yeah. So he said it's just a coincidence that I went to say him that we need you as a leader, and the other end, Prime Minister Secretariat also calling and offering him governor's position. And this gentleman said, no, there are two gentlemen came. I'm finding their proposition very interesting. Let me work with them. So what I'm saying, sometimes we'll have to chase Mr. Rivero kind of person to tell, we need you. Okay, you're coming to my organization has a lot of value, a lot of meaning, right? So sometimes it also happens. I think social entrepreneurs should not shy away to invite people whom they think has a value to offer to the organization. So that's where you're purpose driven. You are not person driven actually. I'll stop here. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir, for this. If we don't have any other questions, Suhail, if you can
So before we end the session, like first of all, sir, it was very informative. Like I was really happy, like see the way like fellows were asking the questions and all, and we would anticipate like more sessions wherein you could help us, like thanks sir, thanks so much for being part of this wonderful session today. And so these are the fellows who are working in multiple locations across the globe. So, and we're very happy that this all is happening from our end, and we are becoming a base to it from India. So in that way, we are contributing to the global transformation. Thanks again, sir, for being part of this session. So before we end the session, I would want all of us to turn our cameras on, just to hold the testament that we were part of this change-making session, and to hold the testament that change is happening with the youth. Thanks. So I would request everybody to. Thanks so much. Thanks everyone for being part of this
Thank you.
wonderful session. And amazing having you. Thanks so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks for inviting. I also enjoyed the conversation, and just saying hello to Gokul, seeing him after a long time on the screen. Hope everything is good. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.